For teams chasing postseason success this year, there's still plenty of regular season left to get ready for the playoffs, but for the teams at the bottom of the standings, this is definitely the time to solidify their odds of landing the top overall pick in the 2025 NBA Draft for the chance to select 6'9" Duke freshman Cooper Flagg, who's considered the consensus best talent from this year's draft class. Well, at 18 years old, Flagg's still supposed to be in high school, and yet he's currently putting up one of the most dominant seasons ever in the history of college basketball. Looking at it, no freshman ever has led his team in every major statistical category in the history of the NCAA men's basketball tournament. That is, until Cooper Flagg this year, as he's currently leading Duke in every statistical category with 19.8 points, 7.5 rebounds, 4 assists, more than a steal, and more than a block per contest. Also, since 1973, only two college freshman players, Kevin Durant and Zion Williamson, have earned unanimous Men's National Player of the Year honors, while Anthony Davis barely missed out on receiving unanimous National Player of the Year recognition, but AD still became one of only 3 college freshmen ever, alongside Carmelo Anthony and Tyus Jones, to be named Most Outstanding Player of the NCAA Final Four. Meanwhile, Cooper Flagg is on pace to join all those ranks. He is the odds-on favorite to win every National Player of the Year award, and he currently has the number 4 ranked Duke Blue Devils well positioned to win the national title this year. And Flagg is doing this while shooting almost 49% from the field, 38% from deep, and 81% from the free throw line, while also looking as good of a defender as you can expect from a 6'9" wing. Well, sure, the NBA has tried to discourage outright tanking for top prospects like Cooper Flagg when back in 2019, the odds at landing the number 1 pick has been capped to just 14% for the league's bottom 3 teams. But still, the potential of landing someone like Cooper Flagg is the main reason why teams like the Wizards, the Jazz, the Pelicans, and the Charlotte Hornets are all fine being so terrible this season. The crazy thing is, there's also a realistic scenario wherein even the current best team in the NBA, the OKC Thunder, or even the San Antonio Spurs, who's already got Victor Wembanyama, could actually land this year's top overall pick and draft Cooper Flagg. So what's good everyone, it's Real Balls here, and in this video, let's take a look into the interesting draft situation for all these teams to understand why the race for Cooper Flagg might actually be wilder than you think. So let's get to it. Among the teams who are currently headlining the race for Cooper Flagg, the bottom 3 in the standings, the Wizards, the Pelicans, and the Jazz are currently tied with the best odds to land the top overall pick at 14%. First off, there's the Washington Wizards, who have the worst record in the entire NBA at 9-45. Well, if you would remember, back in 2020, Washington traded John Wall and a 2023 first-round pick to the Houston Rockets in exchange for Russell Westbrook. And you gotta credit the Wizards front office for placing protections on that first-round pick, because to this day, that pick has not yet conveyed to the Houston Rockets, as that pick was top 14 protected in 2023, top 12 protected in 2024, and is top 10 protected this year. And currently, with the worst record in the entire league this season and with a really young and inexperienced roster, the Washington Wizards have a solid chance at maintaining their 14% odds to win the draft lottery. And that is even though they have a 45.1% strength of schedule for their remaining games this season, which actually leaves them with the second easiest schedule in the entire league after the All-Star break. Tied with the Washington Wizards for the highest odds to land the top overall pick this year are the New Orleans Pelicans, who currently have the second worst record in the entire league. While it's been a totally disastrous season for the Pelicans, after the DeJounte Murray injury and the Brandon Ingram trade, the Pelicans made sure that they would never see the Murray, Ingram, and Zion Williamson trio play a single game together again. Injuries continue to plague this team, but luckily for the franchise, they still have the rights to their first-round pick this year. Despite winning the Anthony Davis lottery back in 2012 as well as the Zion Williamson sweepstakes back in 2019, overall, the Pelicans won just 5 playoff games with Anthony Davis and not a single one with Zion Williamson, which is why landing someone like Cooper Flagg could be that much-needed game changer for this franchise. And that goal seems to be more and more attainable as the season goes on, especially with the Pelicans having the 9th most difficult remaining schedule in the entire league for the rest of the season. Moving on, tied with the Wizards and the Pelicans for the highest odds to land the top overall pick this year are the Utah Jazz, who currently have the 3rd worst record in the entire NBA. Well, the Jazz have never selected first overall in the draft during the team's 51-year history, so winning the lottery this year could really be huge for the franchise. Although, there's an alternate reality wherein their first-round pick this year actually goes to the OKC Thunder, as back in 2021, Utah actually traded Derek Favors and a future first-round pick to OKC in exchange for the Thunder taking Favors' money off Utah's books. Luckily for Jazz fans, their front office was smart enough to place top 10 protections on that first-round pick for the years 2024 and 2025. Otherwise, this pick would be going to OKC this year. Though in hindsight, placing protections on that pick might not have seemed necessary at the time of the deal since Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert were still on the team back in 2021, so it was seemingly unlikely that the Jazz were going to be bad enough to make an unprotected future first-round pick that valuable. So maybe the Jazz front office actually knew that they were going to move on from Gobert and Mitchell just one offseason later. Whatever the case may be, the Utah Jazz now have a legitimate chance to incorporate someone like Cooper Flagg to their talented core, which already includes Lauri Markkanen, Walker Kessler, and Keontae George among others. Behind the Wizards, the Pelicans, and the Jazz, the Charlotte Hornets have the fourth worst record in the entire league, which gives them the next best odds to land the top overall pick at 12.5%. With new ownership taking over from Michael Jordan, winning the rights to draft Cooper Flagg, the in-state hero from North Carolina, could be that big splash that this franchise desperately needs. Over the past few decades, the Hornets have time and again barely missed out on landing the top overall pick. They picked second in the Victor Wembanyama draft, second in the Anthony Davis draft, second in the Dwight Howard draft, and even in the Shaquille O'Neal draft. And overall, Charlotte has never reached the conference finals in the team's 35-year history. But now, just imagine what this team could build with the young core of Cooper Flagg, LaMelo Ball, and Brandon Miller. The good thing is, despite being in the weaker Eastern Conference, Charlotte has the sixth most difficult schedule in the NBA for the rest of the year, which includes games against powerhouse teams like Boston, OKC, and Cleveland. So wouldn't really be surprised to see Charlotte on top of the draft lottery come May. The final team which I consider a favorite to land Cooper Flagg are the Brooklyn Nets. Well, technically, right now, the Toronto Raptors have a slightly worse record than Brooklyn, but it's just that the Raptors still somehow look comfortable competing for the play-in tournament while staying mediocre, while Brooklyn just seems more engaged in a tank for the bottom. But either way, landing Cooper Flagg would quickly change things for a franchise as anonymous as the Brooklyn Nets, who even just a couple weeks ago were still mostly associated with Ben Simmons. Well, the team still has D'Angelo Russell, but they can definitely use a new face of the franchise. Also, if you would remember, 4 years ago, Brooklyn sent a 2024 first-round pick to the Houston Rockets as part of the ill-fated James Harden trade. That pick eventually became last year's third overall selection, Reed Shepherd, who's been looking solid for Houston. Thankfully for Brooklyn, they can turn things around as they're in control of their first-round pick this year, and with that comes their chance at potentially landing a new franchise star in Cooper Flagg. But aside from those 5 teams who are considered favorites to win the top spot in the draft, there are also teams like the 76ers, the Raptors, the Bulls, and the Blazers who are all in lottery limbo, who seem to be bad yet are not actually bad enough to reach the bottom of the standings. And while one of those teams could still very much land the top overall pick, the more interesting question though I think is, what happens when you have already terrifying teams potentially landing Cooper Flagg? First, there's the San Antonio Spurs, who actually own 2 first-round picks in this year's draft. Believe it or not, there's actually a scenario wherein Cooper Flagg gets paired with Victor Wembanyama in San Antonio. Well, for sure, acquiring star point guard De'Aaron Fox just boosted the Spurs' playoff chances, which actually hurts their odds at landing Cooper Flagg with their own pick. But the thing is, the Spurs can actually have the best of both worlds. They can actually have a playoff run and still have Cooper Flagg in waiting. Because even if San Antonio makes the playoffs and misses the lottery with their own pick, they can still land the top overall selection thanks to the DeJounte Murray trade in 2022. As in that transaction, the Spurs received 4 first-round picks, which includes Atlanta's first-round pick this year. And the good news for San Antonio is the Atlanta Hawks have mostly just hovered around 500 this season with a lot of chances to fall further down the standings. Most improved player candidate Jalen Johnson suffered a season-ending shoulder injury a month ago, and the Hawks also traded 2 core players in DeAndre Hunter and Bogdan Bogdanovic during the deadline. The only problem is, by playing in the weaker Eastern Conference, the Atlanta Hawks can only fall so far in the draft lottery, especially with the 4th easiest schedule remaining for the season. But the San Antonio Spurs in the West have the 8th most difficult strength of schedule remaining in the NBA. So in the best case scenario, San Antonio could easily fall to number 7 in the draft lottery odds, which could actually give them a 7.5% chance to land the top overall pick. Then combine that with the odds from the Atlanta Hawks pick, and the Spurs could basically have a combined 13.5% 50% chance to land the top overall pick, which is still basically the same odds as that of the Wizards, the Pelicans, and the Jazz. Well, the Spurs already have had a legendary Tim Duncan and David Robinson frontcourt, but just imagine Cooper Flagg and Victor Wembanyama playing their entire careers together in San Antonio. But what's probably an even scarier sight for the rest of the NBA would be Cooper Flagg joining MVP contender Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, All-Star Jalen Williams, and big man Chet Holmgren in Oklahoma City, which is also not out of the question. Well, the Thunder own Philadelphia's first-round pick this year, but it is actually top 6 protected, meaning it will only convey to OKC if the pick lands outside of the top 6. So regardless, OKC still can't win the Cooper Flagg sweepstakes with the 76ers pick. But the crazy thing is, the Thunder have another sneaky shot at a lottery pick via the LA Clippers. As part of the 2019 trade that sent Paul George to LA, in addition to receiving Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, OKC also acquired the rights to swap with the Clippers for their 2025 first-round pick along with many other draft picks. Well sure, currently, the Clippers are actually in the playoff picture as they are occupying the 6th seed in the Western Conference. But then there are 4 other teams in Minnesota, Dallas, Sacramento, and Golden State who are all within 3 games of that 6th seed. And the thing is, the Clippers actually have the second hardest remaining schedule in the league post All-Star break. Plus, if you come to think of it, given James Harden's age and the injury history of Kawhi Leonard, a late season fallout isn't going to be surprising as well. And if the Clippers don't lock in a playoff spot with the 6th seed, they're basically just a bad play-in tournament away from handing OKC another lottery pick in the draft. So yes, there's an actual chance that the Thunder lands a talent such as Cooper Flagg right after they potentially win the 2025 NBA title. Well, at the end of the day, Cooper Flagg is as hyped of a forward entering the NBA as Anthony Davis and Zion Williamson were in recent years. And while he isn't going to be the coup that Victor Wembanyama was for the Spurs 2 years ago, it's not really reasonable to compare anybody to that historic hype. Still, Cooper Flagg is talented enough to change the futures of franchises like the Wizards, Jazz, Hornets, or Nets, and to potentially further solidify emerging dynasties in OKC and San Antonio. So thank you guys if you've actually made it this far into the video, but which team do you actually want to see landing Cooper Flagg? Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comment section below, and again, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing as well. Again, this has been Real Balls, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.